Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I make these really cute cloth pads. About 15 years ago, I made my first set of cloth pads, and this was from a pattern that I got from a friend, and the design of them had kind of a fold-over envelope style top, and then you would take a long length of flannel, fold it up, and stuff it into the top of the pad. And I guess the idea behind it was that they would wash and dry quicker. But I found the design a little bit fussy, a little bit time consuming, having to fold up the flannel every single time after I washed them. But nonetheless, I still use them for many, many years. Then in our last house, the house was on a well, and we had a special low water washer that I guess was supposed to conserve water, but I found that they just did not wash the pads very well. So I went back to using disposable pads. Fast forward a number of years, we're at a new house, we have a washer that works really well, and now I have a whole bunch of other females in the house that require pads. So I thought that it would be a good time to make a whole bunch of cloth pads. And I'm going to take you through the pattern that I came up with for this, and then the materials, and then I'm going to show you my process for making them. Now, it may be very different from the way that you make cloth pads or from how you've seen online. I just came up with a way that felt intuitive and as speedy as possible for me because I'm making so many. I have 5 girls plus myself, so like I said, I need a lot of pads. If you go onto Etsy and search by cloth pads, you will find a whole bunch of blog posts and patterns for reusable pads. You can go on Etsy, people are selling their patterns. But what I did was, because I still had some disposable pads, I just took like our favorite sizes and I pretty much just traced around them, and then I did tweak the size a little bit just to get exactly what I wanted. But what I came up with was 3 different pad sizes, and I will explain the reason for all 3. The first one is a small pad, so perfect for everyday use, for like the beginning and end of your cycle. You can layer up as many layers inside to make it a little bit more absorbent, or you can make it a lighter day pad. Then I made a longer one, so you can see it sticks out a little bit longer than the day one. So this would be more of a night pad, again, adding extra layers if you need more absorbency. Then get ready for this one. Here's the jumbo size perimenopausal pad. Now, I'm 46 and a half, and something I don't think that people really talk about is the perimenopausal flooding. So this was a little bit of a surprise to me, but apparently it's quite common that your periods get heavier sometimes before they then stop altogether. So thus needing this gigantic pad. Again, I can add as many layers as I want to make it as absorbent as I want. So that is the pattern, and then I made a pattern for the lining pieces again. So we've got the longer one, the night pad, and then the small. And all I did, I don't know if you can see there, all I did was make it to fit inside the outline of the pad. I didn't want to make it exactly the same size because it would be so many thicknesses of fabric to sew through. So I made sure to leave, it's probably close to ½ inch around so that there would be space to sew. Now for the materials that you need for the pads. First up, I found this really cute flannel. I just love the sweet flower pattern on this. I think I might actually buy some more of this to make nightgowns for next winter for myself and my girls. Then I bought a whole bunch of just plain white flannel. This is for inside of the pads, but I realized as I was cutting out the pads that I may actually do just the floor for the top and then the white for the backing. And then if you want to make the pads leak proof, you want to buy this PUL fabric. So it's fabric that is a knit fabric on one side, and then it has a plastic coating on the other. And people most often use these for cloth diapers, but they work really well for reusable pads. And then because I sporadically make quilts, I had some of this, I believe it's called Warm and Natural cotton batting. So this is a lot thicker, perfect for like the night pads or for my perimenopausal pads. The other items that you're going to need is some cam snaps. You can see those. I have some in white and black. Black was from a sewing project I had, and then the white ones. And then you're going to want one of the presses that kind of install the snaps into place. And then I also have a punch to put a hole for the snap. You can just use an awl if you have one, but I happen to have this handy little punch. I'm going to switch my machine over to a denim needle just because it is going to be going through 2 layers of flannel and then also the PUL fabric, so I just want to make sure that I have a sturdy enough needle so that it doesn't break. And then you're going to want thread in coordinating color to your fabric. Now it's time to start cutting everything out. So when I first made the pattern, I just made it onto a piece of paper just so I could figure out the size that I wanted. But then once I had the size down, I actually traced them off onto Bristol board just so that they would be a little bit sturdier, and so that instead of pinning a paper pattern down, I could just trace around with a fabric marker or a Sharpie. This just makes it go a whole lot quicker. So you need to figure out how many pads you want to make, and then like I mentioned, I'm just going to do the pattern for the top, and then the back is going to be out of the white fabric. So you need 2 pieces of flannel from your pad shape for each pad, and then you need to trace out 1 out of the PUL fabric. Okay, now it's time for me to start cutting out these tops. Okay, now it's time to work on the backs. And next up is the PUL fabric. So I just need 1 layer of these for each of the pads. Okay, I have enough cut out for 4 of the day pads. So I have 4 tops, 4 backs, and 4 of the PUL fabric. And then I have 4 nighttime fronts, backs, and the PUL. And then I just have 1 of the jumbo size night pad that I have cut out. This was another fabric that I have for another project that I'll be showing you, but I thought it'd be cute to make 1 out of this. And now it's time to move on to the liners. Now it's going to be up to you how many layers you want inside each pad. The easiest way to figure that out is to just cut out a bunch of the layers, layer them up, and see if you think that's going to be thick enough. I like the idea of having some thinner ones and some thicker ones, so I've just gone ahead and I folded my fabric over so that it's 4 layers thick. This is just to save time, so I'll start cutting out some of the different sizes. So the small, and then the long liner, and then the extra long liner. And I'm also going to cut out a few layers out of this Warm and Natural batting just for the thicker pads. I've got all of my pieces cut out, and now I'm going to show you how I assemble these. So I'm going to start with my backing piece, and I'm going to lay that down with the right side down. And then next up is the PUL fabric, and I'm going to lay that with the shiny plasticized side up. And then I have my layers. So this one I've done 1 flannel, 1 of the Warm and Natural batting, and then 1 flannel. And what I'm actually going to do first is I'm actually going to secure these layers through both of these layers. So I'm first going to pin the pad down. I'm going to do a row of stitching on this side and on this side, kind of close to the edge, just to secure it. And this is all going to make more sense once you see how I put this together. And I find that these really long pins, I don't know if it's going to focus on that, is really helpful when it comes to this, or you can just use a regular size pin, whatever you have on hand. So I just want to make sure that I have this kind of centered so that I have seam allowance left around the edge. Okay, so now everything is nice and secure, so I can stitch along the side without things moving around. I'm going to do the same thing for all of the pads. I'm going to go ahead and run a row of stitching along each side of the lining. Okay, so now I'm going to repeat the process with the other two. So now that I have them all attached, in this next step you're going to understand why I sewed them to the bottom. So I'm going to flip them all upside down. So now this is right side facing up. So now I'm going to find the top of the pad and I'm going to put it right side up, which is this side here, facing the right side of the pad. Okay, so right sides are touching each other and the lining is underneath. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin all around the pad, okay, pinning these edges together, and I'm going to leave the side of the wing open because I want an opening so that I can turn this pad right side out. So I'm going to put pins all around the outside. Okay, and this is what it looks like. And I'm going to repeat the process with the rest of the pads. One thing that I did forget to mention is on the wing that you're going to leave open, I find that by trimming off the seam allowance, so for these ones it's 3/8 of an inch, by trimming that off it just means when I go to press these edges and then top stitch, it is just less bulk. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for these. Now you'll notice on my sewing machine I have this piece of washi tape. This is just to mark the seam allowance. You could use some masking tape or whatever kind of tape that you have, but it just gives you a longer visual guide than those little tiny lines that they put there. I just find that it helps to speed up the sewing process. So I'm going to go ahead and start sewing around the edges of these pads. Next up, I want to go ahead and trim off some of the seam allowance, and I also want to clip my corners. That's just going to remove some of the bulk from the edges of the wings, so I'm just going to cut it like a little triangle. I'm going to remove off of the corner there. Next up, I want to turn these right side out. So I'm going to find that edge that has the opening, and I'm going to start to turn this right side out. Now you have to work at it a little bit. Now it's really helpful to have a chopstick or something that you can put in to help kind of push out the edges. Because you really want to make sure that you get nice sharp corners on the wings there. Okay, so that's turned out, and now I need to work on the other ones. Now, if you have a really thick pad, you could leave a little bit more of this open to give you a little bit more space, but I find that, you know, it takes a little bit of work, but it usually works to fit it through this area here. Now that they are all turned out, I just want to go ahead and lightly press the pad just to get the shape laying a little bit nicer so that I can then top stitch. Now you don't want to go too hot or like press your iron for too long on the pad because it does have that plastic coated fabric inside, so you don't want to melt that. You just want to do a nice light pressing. Just making sure that all those little edges are turned out nicely. And then on that opening, you want to tuck the edges in 3/8 of an inch and press that. Now I'm going to go ahead and top stitch the pads. So I'm going to go pretty close to the edge, about 1/4 of an inch all around the outside of the pad. And I just put a couple of pins in the side that there was an opening, just to make sure that it stays positioned as I catch it with the top stitching. Now when I switch to top stitching the red pads, I will put a spool of red thread in my machine and then keep the white in the bottom so that there's white thread on the bottom and red on top. So next up, I'm going to top stitch 2 rows of stitching, one along this side and one along this side, just along the edges of where the lining is. If I show you on one that I've done, you might be able to see. And I don't measure this, I just kind of guesstimate and run a row of stitching along each side. And now the final step for these is going to be installing the cam snaps, because you want a way to snap them around your underwear, right? So these are super easy to install. You just want to make sure that you have one facing up and one facing down. So I will show you that process. First up, like I mentioned, I have this really handy punch. So you just want to find the center edge of one of the wings, and now you don't want to go too close to the edge. You want to make sure that you have enough room for the snap. Okay, and I'm going to do that on both sides. Okay, so now like I mentioned, you want to have 2 of the backs, and then you want the 2 snaps that fit together. Okay, so you put it through the hole, and then I'm going to put the one part over it, and then the press has a little kind of cup that you settle the back into, and you make sure that it's nicely positioned, and then you squeeze. Okay, and the snap is installed. Okay, so now on this one, I want to make sure that it's the opposite. Okay, so the backing now is on the other side. Okay, so now when I wrap it around, it snaps together. Well, I've got a really good start on a whole bunch of cloth pads. I've got more cut out that I'm going to keep working on, but I hope that you found this tutorial helpful. I will see if I can figure out scanning the patterns, putting it maybe into a Dropbox. If I do manage to figure that out, I'm not very techy when it comes to computers, but if I do figure that out, I will put the links in the video description so that you can download the patterns that I used. But like I said, there are a bunch on Pinterest that you can also find for free. I did neglect to say at the very beginning of the video when I was talking about materials, you can use many different kinds of materials. I know some people use bamboo fleece. I've seen linen pads, and I chose cotton flannel just because it's available, it's inexpensive, and I knew I was going to be making a bunch of them, so I just wanted something that would be nice and soft and easy, and I mean the patterns are really cute, so that's why I went with that. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and thank you so much for watching. Keep your eye out for more zero waste sewing project videos. They're going to be coming soon, and I will see you in the next video.